Okay, so welcome back to the People Podcast, and I've got Amy back with me, my favourite. But we have some news, don't we? Because you are no longer Arete HR.
Yeah, no.
Do tell me more.
Yeah, so obviously, Arete is amazing. It was my little baby, and then I started working a little bit with a bigger, more established HR consultancy called Blossom HR, and then the opportunity arose to actually join their team, which was really exciting. And so yeah, joined Blossom HR. There's a fab team there. Rosie and Sarah, who are the directors at Blossom, are incredible, and so are the rest of the team. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be joining Blossom, which is amazing. Yeah. So yeah, still exactly the same type of thing, you know, supporting loads of businesses, and it's really nice to be working with such a broad range of businesses that already work with Blossom.
Yeah.
And the team there are fantastic. They've got loads of experience, and it's just great to be back in a team environment. And yeah, working with lots of existing and new clients, which is fab. So nothing kind of really changes from my point of view, but
no, you're still the HR expert in this podcast.
But yeah, just really nice to be working back with a lovely team. So yeah, good. I'm really excited to be part of their team now.
Well, congrats, that's awesome. And how, I suppose, has that been, just navigating that change, but also obviously we're midst of half term as well. How has that been?
Yeah, I mean, really good. I mean, the guys, you know, Sarah and Rosie are amazing, you know, as directors of the business, and are super flexible with us all, which is really helpful. And they've all got kids themselves, so they understand the kind of the needs of half term and trying to balance everyone's holiday and things like that. But I think for any business, you know, trying to work out school holidays is always a challenge, isn't it? And especially for us parents. I mean, you know, they don't make it easy for working parents, do they? You know, in general, we only, you know, businesses only have to give so much holiday, and you know, rightly so, because we've still got businesses to run. But they make the school holidays however many weeks.
So it just still seems so mad that we're still in this situation, really. Like, if you think how many years the school system has stayed the same, but actually working life is evolving, as we're seeing, you know, flexibility's, you know, getting better, and all those sort of things. We had obviously we did our podcast on a bit of flexibility before, didn't we, around what we could do. But yeah, I mean, as you know, we're both kind of first time into school holidays this year.
I know.
And it is a real challenge. Like, I mean, I don't know about you, but like me and my husband, we sat down and we had to plan out like almost like 12 months in advance, because which is madness. I mean, we're like fairly planny anyway, but I can imagine for families and parents that don't really plan too far in advance, that's going to be even more of like a step to, because otherwise I don't know how people do it with trying to, because you've still got to know whether you've got enough annual leave to cover all of those things.
Absolutely, it's so difficult. And I think as well, like, you know, if you also don't have necessarily like loads of family around you, like I know lots of people that don't have like grandparents like on tap, for example, you know, to just help out with childcare and people around, that then creates even more of a challenge, doesn't it, for people?
Massively.
And it's not like with holiday clubs you can even plan that far in advance. I mean, our school only sent out the you know, the information about local holiday clubs for the summer, like the week before half term. So it's like it's really difficult to plan in advance. It's really, really hard. I mean, we're really lucky that we've got, you know, we do have grandparents that live really locally that are able to help on certain days, but it's not all the time. And there's a lot of expectation, isn't there, on families to help out. So definitely.
I just think because we've been talking about this a lot, haven't we, around that I think there's still a lot that businesses could do. I think particularly around like the school holidays, and or even just, to be honest, that the summer, because it's such a big chunk of time.
Absolutely.
And I know, like, from my perspective, like with my employer, one of the things that's been really helpful is that even though I work part-time, for things like half term and summer holidays and things, I've asked if I can swap like non-working days.
Oh yeah, amazing.
Really great. So it means that if I've got childcare available only on certain days of the week, whether that's grandparents or whether that's I could only get them into that football camp
Yeah.
that day,
Yeah.
but I don't need that day because I'm
No.
not working. But it means
Yeah.
that I can still give the business what they need in that
Yes,
week
absolutely.
and still give them my hours, but
Yeah.
they're just giving me that flexibility to move it around a little bit.
Yeah.
And actually, it means they get advance notice of that too.
That changed
So
it.
that's worked amazingly, and I
Yeah.
couldn't have asked for more with that,
No.
really.
And I think for businesses, like putting my HR business hat on, I think a lot of businesses maybe didn't realize actually how valuable that flexibility is to them,
Yeah.
because by allowing your employees, your colleagues, to have that little bit of flexibility during, especially like you said, the long 6-week break,
Mhm.
you're going to get twofold back from your employees, because if they know that you're going to be flexible with them, I'd like to think that I know I would from my employee, like from my employer. If you get that bit of flexibility from them, you're gonna give it back.
Yeah,
In other
definitely.
ways, when you have got a bit more, you've got more time because the kids are in school or nursery, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for employers to kind of consider what flexibility they can offer to staff during that time.
Yeah,
And like you
definitely.
say, there's loads of different ways that you can offer flexibility without giving people loads of time off for free.
Oh yeah, because you told me this great tip, which I think our listeners are going to love. So tell me a bit more about what you were saying earlier
Yeah,
about.
so I think there's loads of different things. Whether it's a case of like you could apply for like a temporary reduction in hours. So I know this is going to affect families from a financial perspective, and you have to obviously weigh all that up.
Yeah.
But it could be that, like, you apply for a temporary change to your working hours or working pattern.
Yeah.
So it could be that actually you work 5-6 hours a day. Maybe you already work part-time. Maybe you can almost do like a split shift. So you maybe start a bit earlier in the morning to cover that morning period, and then maybe work later into the evening when your partner's home and that can take over childcare, or you can maybe rely on a family member or a friend or a neighbour to support with childcare. So I think there's loads of different ways that you can, both the employer and employee can look at the childcare options. But what I suggest to employees is you just have an open and honest conversation with your employer, because I don't think anyone wants to, everyone wants to support each other in that when it's difficult. I think most people, if you've ever had kids, you understand how tricky it is. So I think, to be honest, my advice would always be just to have an open and honest conversation about what your struggles are. Maybe if there's a certain pinch point in the holidays or a certain day of the week, and just talk to your employer about options. It doesn't need to go under a formal flexible working, I don't think, at this stage. It might be that your employer says you need to put it in as a request, depending on policies. I think just start by having an open and honest conversation. I think that's always the best way to start anything. And you can work through it together and figure out, there might be certain things that your employer says, right, well, okay, you need every Thursday off for the 6 weeks. I can't give you this Thursday off because there's already other people off. However, could we maybe organise like a split shift that day, or can we work through it a different way, or can you have a Wednesday off instead of a Thursday that week? And just try and work it out together as a group. I think that's going to be the most collaborative way, and it's going to make sure that you both get out of it what you need, without just keeps that open line of communication, which is always the best thing in these scenarios. Especially if you want to like reduce a day, but I mean, you could look to either reduce by a whole day or a whole couple of days a week. You could maybe look, I said, to adjust your hours slightly just to make it work, maybe with your partner. And I think we often see that it's often the mums that are making these, and I don't want to make those assumptions because there are lots of dads who are super, super hands-on, but we see it a lot, don't we? That it's often
We're often
the mums,
the default parent.
Absolutely. We're the ones organising, making the arrangements and stuff. So I also would really recommend, as you did with James, is sitting down together and working
even if it's
out,
over a glass of wine.
Absolutely. Even
I mean, you can.
over
a glass of wine with a spreadsheet is basically what we had to do.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. And I think sit down together, work it through together, because actually, when you are working, whether that's part-time, full-time, makes no odds. There's a lot going on in your households, and so. I'm not a relationship counsellor by any stretch.
No, but it's sharing the load a little bit,
absolutely.
isn't it? So it's not all on the default parent to sort it out either.
Absolutely. And make those arrangements and have those conversations with friends, family members. I mean, another good thing, I've got a lovely group of school mums that, there's a fab group of us, and we've already talked about a few dates where, I'm going to have the day off on that particular week, so bring the kids to me. And then on another week, like, we'll do the same.
That's
So
a good idea.
and maybe you can link in with like some nursery mums and school mums.
Or your NCT group.
Absolutely. Group of friends, whoever it is. I mean, and also don't forget, if you've got younger children who are in nursery, you obviously get your 30 hours a week for free, pro rata. And depending on how that's set up with your nursery, you might be able to look at what hours they currently do, and whether you might be able to add a couple of days to your nursery rota during the school holidays, if that helps you.
Because there's some nurseries, if you can afford it, you can do extra days in the holidays.
Absolutely.
And as long as you give them advance, they can then work their staff ratios. Because I think particularly with young ones, isn't it? They've got certain ratios they've got to meet, and for staffing.
Well, like, I know I've got a week in July. It's actually before the school holidays, but my mother-in-law looks after my children on a Thursday. And so, but she's actually on holiday herself, and so, you know, I have to come up with other childcare arrangements. So I've asked nursery if they could have my youngest for half a day, you know, just so that we can cover the load a little bit on that day and help out. And so I think a lot of people are away in the school holidays, so there could be some wiggle room with extra spaces at nurseries and preschools. Well, if your preschool's open, that is, in the school holidays. But maybe consider. There's lots of different options, but I think it's just really important to plan ahead.
Yes, definitely.
Failure to plan is planning to fail. That's what I always say.
I love that.
But I think, plan ahead. Try and get, you know, that's what. And I think maybe having the May half term now, and we've, you know, it doesn't feel that long ago since Easter. It's been quite a short term. It kind of highlights the importance of, like, it's not very far away until the next school holiday.
Catches up with you, doesn't it?
So trying to, like, plan ahead in advance, get some working groups together with other, like, working families and stuff, where you might be able to share the load a little bit. And just have a really early open conversation with your employer about what support they might be able to offer.
And almost not be afraid of that conversation either, because I think sometimes there's almost a worry about asking, even, you know, to because is it going to be a burden, or is it going to be too much to ask? But actually, you know, it's kind of that classic phrase of don't ask, don't get, you know, is it, you've just got to try and have, like you said, that open conversation. Because I wasn't sure when I came up with the idea of the swapping non-working days. I didn't know if my employer was going to turn around and go, oh no, that doesn't quite work for us. And if it didn't, then I would just discuss other options. But actually, they were absolutely fine about it, and it's worked beautifully. And that's because, again, of my situation where I've got help, but my dad works shifts, so I never know what works, and, you know, when I can swap. And yes, my gosh, it's a lot of logistics, but actually long term it makes life a lot easier. And, you know, often if you are the default parent, you're sometimes trying to save your own leave for those emergency moments as well, you know, when your child's going to be sick, you know, particularly through, you know, you're about to head into winter, obviously, after the summer holidays, and if you've used all your leave in the summer holidays, you've not got no fallback either. So there's almost that in the back of my mind as well, thinking, I need to save a bit of leave for that. It is important, isn't it?
Important. The other thing to mention as well, I know we've talked about it on previous podcasts, is around working from home. You know, and I think working from home, if you are able to work from home, that can obviously give you a lot of flexibility with your time. I think just be mindful of the age of your children, and
we did
the
talk
duty
about
of
that.
care. I think as well, you know, I'm probably similar to you. I've got two children who are quite young, but it's like, one is like, my 5-year-old is very independent and will just happily watch a bit of TV, play with his Lego, do some drawing. You can kind of set him off on an activity, and he's not overly needy. But my 2-year-old is constantly clung to my leg, and you know, we'll try and climb up a cupboard and things like that.
We'll put things in electrical sockets.
Absolutely. So a typical 2-year-old boy. So I think you've got to just be mindful. Like, I wouldn't want to work at home with Ollie, because he is, you know, a typical 2-year-old and into everything. And definitely needs you still to be there. And I would just worry about, like, the duty of care. And that's what I think, from an employer's perspective, is that you have to focus on the duty of care at home. If you're concentrating on work, you're not concentrating on your child, and vice versa.
True.
When they're that young. I get with older children that does become easier. So is it that you could maybe negotiate an extra day working from home a week? You know, maybe you work from home 1 day a week at the moment, but you can maybe do 2 days a week,
just for that period again, isn't it?
I think split your days and do half days. You know, can I work from home, for 3 half days instead of
Mhm.
1 whole day, so that you've got that balance a little
Well, as you know, and I'm sure every parent will probably remember this, whether their
bit.
child started school or not, but when they do start school, they have a bit of a phased entry. So, like,
Yes,
my
that's the
twins are
other
about to
thing.
start school in September, and I'm already thinking, okay, I've got 3 weeks of like half days, and
Yeah,
then maybe a mix of full days and half days to try and cover.
yeah,
Um, so, but again, I've gone to my employer and had an open and honest discussion about how I could manage that.
yeah,
And I've then, even though I technically work 3 days, I'm then going to work every day for those weeks,
yeah.
but do half
Half
days.
days, yeah,
And again, they're probably getting more out of me. If anything, what would be my stakeholders and customers actually would have me around more of that week
yeah,
than they normally would. So
absolutely.
actually, it has worked out. And I
Yeah,
appreciate that, depending on the business, depending
yeah,
on your
that's it.
commitments, like, for example, when I'm delivering training, if it was an all day training, I'm not going to be able to turn around and go, oh, I'm only going to be able to work half day that day.
Yeah,
Um, so, it does also, depend on business need, and that will obviously have to
absolutely.
come forward as well.
Yeah.
But
And that's why, I know I bleat on about it all the time, but that's why those open and honest conversations are really key, because every business is going to have quite slightly different needs, or
yeah,
like you said, the client requirements or customer requirements are different.
mm,
So that's why it's just really important to have those conversations nice and early. So there's lots of time to think, to plan,
yeah,
to make different arrangements. But you're hopefully going to come to some arrangement that's going to work for everybody, that's going to still allow the business to get out of you what they need and get the work done, and you to be productive in that time,
yeah,
and still feel like you're adding value and you're valued within that business. But at the same time, you're still going to be able to then have that time, one, to spend time with your children in the school holidays, because that's what is nice to do,
yeah.
but also to help with that kind of crazy childcare requirement
I
that we
know.
have during the summer months. So yeah, all very
All of
tricky.
that.
So
There's
lots of balance.
there's something that's literally just popped into my head, is that I suppose also, if you work in a team and you're in a similar role to someone else within the
Yeah,
team, but is also in a similar position with the parenting side of things.
yeah,
I was thinking, oh, if a manager says yes to obviously one person doing half days for that week,
yeah,
do they then have to say yes to another person asking? And that's, again, it's about that consistent
yeah,
approach and saying yes and when you can. But actually, if you had two people that were in that same position, could you kind of bring your other work colleagues into that conversation and say,
absolutely.
actually, we
Yeah,
both need a bit of flexibility in these weeks. Can we flex so that the work and the business is still covered by both
absolutely.
of us? But I don't know, I might do the mornings that week and my colleague might do the afternoons, so that whole
Yeah,
day is still covered, and you're still
absolutely.
getting our work and our hours,
Yeah,
but we're just flexing it in a
that is
different
the
way. So
epitome of teamwork.
yeah, exactly. But
Absolutely.
it's those
Yeah,
sorts of things, and don't get me wrong, that's not always going to work in every case, but I suppose it's just trying to think outside the box a little bit and be a bit
yeah,
creative with
definitely.
what you can do.
Yeah,
And hopefully you would know your team well enough to also be able to say, actually,
yeah,
I know what's going to work, and what I could ask of my colleagues as well
yeah,
to maybe
definitely.
work with
Yeah.
you.
And I think it's just really key to be prepared and do that early, so you've
Mm.
got lots of time to organise it.
Yeah, definitely.
Recap really, but just to be prepared. Try and get. I know the thing is, when you're in life, we feel there's so much going on. There's so much to organise from a work family perspective all the time, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. But I think if you can try and plan ahead, try and understand. Is there a group of colleagues, friends, school
Yeah.
mums, nursery mums that you can maybe club together and try and create some kind of childcare arrangement with. Have conversations with family members early. Is it that you've got aunties and uncles, or sisters and brothers that can help out, and they might be able to flex their holiday a little bit if they don't have children, or
Yeah.
they have children too. Just have a little think about who is in kind of your village, if you like, that you can rely
Yes.
upon.
And also thinking about the village thing is, if your child doesn't spend loads of time with your friends and you're worried about leaving them with a
Yeah,
friend for the first time in half term, again, try and think about, okay, at the weekend, could I test out
yeah,
my child being with my auntie or being with a cousin, you know, just for an hour or two, just to test the water and get them feeling comfortable that they might be on their own with this person in a half term. And the same with like friends and things, you know, test the water when you're not under pressure and you're not in that stressful situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Because then if your child does want you and is having a bit of a, oh, okay, I want mummy back or I want daddy back. It's not going to be a problem because you're not in work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know? Definitely would 100% agree with that. And I think as well, like, you know, by making those plans nice and early, from a work perspective, you can try and get a bit ahead of the game. If you know you're going to be working slightly less hours or slightly different hours, you can try and get ahead of things or plan work in a slightly different way if you know what you're doing. And I think, again, having your employer on board and getting them, you know, into that pattern as well, they're going to help you out with those sorts of things too. So I think it's just all about like planning. This is like another thing we have to plan, but I think all about the planning, looking at different options. I mean, and it's very difficult because, you know, some people will be in a financial position, they can pay for holiday camps and clubs and extra childcare, but for some families that isn't the case. I mean, I certainly couldn't put them in camp every day, for sure. So it's trying to find that balance of, you know, like what's going to work best and what's going to fit your budget, and you know, reducing your hours is obviously going to have a financial impact as well. So it's very, very difficult. I think you just got to weigh it up as a family, but I definitely would just recommend making those plans nice and early so that you can get ahead of the game.
And ideally together, if you do have a partner or a husband. And like you say, we're both definitely not relationship experts, and we've definitely spent a few Saturday nights moaning about our other halves, but it is important. And a part of the, you know, some of the maternity coaching I've been doing recently has been a bit about home contracting, you know, and making sure that mental load, even down to like who's looking after your children, is not just with the default parent. And whatever that looks like in your situation, and that has, you know, even just coaching someone through that, you know, it does make a huge difference to their lives if you just have that open conversation about it.
And maybe also considering blended families as well. So if you've got step parents involved, things like that, is, you know, I know sometimes that can create some tension within families, but actually, again, having that open conversation in advance, right? This is what I can probably do. Like, what availability do you guys have? And trying to bring that together is going to make. I know that's not always the case, and this is, you know, we've got to be very mindful of individual circumstances, but you know, if you can, again, having these conversations really early is just going to help, like, build a plan, take the stress away as much as possible.
I suppose my other top tip for an employer as well is to consider the financial well-being of your like staff members as well, because actually, you know, these things do weigh on your mind. You know, not only, like you said, balancing childcare, but also the financial implications of trying to balance all of those things. And certainly, like you say, paying for childcare camps, whatever that might look like. And it might be that just, again, for that period, that financial well-being needs to be more considered.
Absolutely. And just being empathetic. I mean, you know, lots of people have children, but some people don't have children. So if you are a manager and you don't have children, you've never necessarily had to manage these sorts of extra responsibilities, then just try and be empathetic and like consider that person and what they're going through. And also just consider that, like, by giving them a little bit of flexibility and being kind in those times is going to mean that you get something back out of them.
100%.
You know, and from an employee's point of view, you know, have open conversations, but if your employer gives you full justification why they can't support something, then, you know, it is remembering that there isn't an obligation for them to help you. If they can't, I mean, I do think, you know, I'd always encourage employers to do what they can, because they're going to get that loyalty back. But, you know, sometimes, you know, and I definitely see it where employees go to their managers and it's like the week before the school holidays and they're demanding a week off and then getting annoyed that they haven't been able to have it. So, and it's kind of like, oh, we've got to try and find that balance here. Like, we need to be supportive, but also employees, you need to kind of like, get it done quickly so the plans can be put in place. Don't just expect for everything to fall into place like
you're absolutely spot on,
because I definitely see that. And I think sometimes
because you see the employer side as well, don't you, dealing with your clients, you know, 100%. They're also, you know, you're often sometimes on the other side as well, trying to kind of say, well, actually, the employer has
Yeah.
done everything they can,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. So that's why I just would always encourage people to do it as early as possible, so you can get that plan in place.
Yeah.
I know if you're trying to do something, 6 months, a year in advance, that can be quite difficult for the school holidays. But
Yeah.
definitely try and look at it. If you haven't got your school holiday plans in place now, definitely be looking at that this rest of the half term, and and in the next couple of weeks, for sure.
Definitely.
And I'm sure by the time this podcast gets released, we'll be even closer to the
I
school
know.
holiday. So I hope by then you've already got your plans in place for the 6-week holiday.
Like I
And if
say,
you
it's
haven't, hurry
it's
up.
definitely it's our first time navigating it as well. So
I know, that's it. It's
we'll,
the first 6 weeks we're having to organise. So we're kind of like, new to the game. So
we'll have to do a revisit podcast, like debrief on how did it actually go.
Expectations versus reality.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Yeah,
we will
absolutely.
do that.
But
no, this has been really interesting. Thank you so much.
Definitely.
Thanks for sharing all of your top tips, because
it's good to chat.
The second that I heard you say that tip, I was like, we need to do a podcast on that, because that sounds great.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for coming in again.
Thanks for having me.
It's been really good.
Yay. Thanks so much.